So let's take a step back and figure out how this all happened. So the year is 2010. Nintendo has just successfully celebrated Mario's 25th anniversary by releasing an old-ass game for $35. Miyamoto holds a meeting at Nintendo headquarters so they can figure out what they can do next. Then somebody in the room says, hey, next year is Zelda's 25th anniversary, so maybe we can remake Ocarina of Time. And Miyamoto loves the idea. Immediately he puts it into effect and they make Ocarina of Time 3D. Next, somebody says, hey, this is going to be Metroid's 25th anniversary too. So why don't we do something for that? And then they made The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword.
Legend of Zelda: The Skyward Sword is a pretty great game, all things considered. I really enjoyed playing in the gigantic, immersive, expansive world of Skyward Sword, and quite frankly, I'm just sad that it ended.
Okay, Skyward Sword. It's been a while. That's one thing I gotta say up front. Came out in 2011, so this has been 8 years since it came out.
Now, back in the day, the hype for this was unreal. I mean, motion control seemed like the future. One-to-one sword gameplay was so amazing that no one could ever be able to go back. This was the next step in gaming. Yeah, Twilight Princess was alright, but Skyward Sword is going to take it to a whole nother level.
So I remember loving this game, and I'm definitely gonna be defending it here. But it has been 8 years. I was in middle school when this came out, so... But, you know what? It's still a good game. It's not like nostalgia glasses or anything, it's not that old.
And then November arrives, and the day gamers have been waiting for is here.
Essentially, you start off in a carriage, and you open up your eyes like you've been knocked out for a little bit, and you look to your left and you look to your right, and you see like two guys. One guy's in front of you. The guy to your right's like a horse thief, I think. And you know, the guy is like talking to you, and you look up and there's this like guy driving the carriage. Horse is going to some towns. You see some people going to the houses because, you know, something's going on. Turns out they first imply it, but then it's very explicitly shown that you're about to be executed.
So, right off the bat, the story is probably the best part about this game. It's mostly because of the characters. Every Zelda game has a similar story. Gotta rescue Zelda, and at the same time, you gotta save the world, because some kind of demon is out. Whether that be Ganon, or something else. It's always a demon, it doesn't matter.
The characters are all actually alright in my opinion. Zelda's cool, and she and Link have this sort of childhood friend dynamic going on, and Fi's alright too.
Zelda and Link are best friends. They grew up together, which is awesome, because Zelda is a cool character, but they never really do much with her because she's just like the princess. You know, there's not that much to her. Some games try to do more than others. Recently, she's been becoming more and more of a character, but she's never been as much of a character as in Skyward Sword.
I do feel like changing up who Link is a little weird, especially for people who are like longtime fans of the series. Like, I think normally you just want to play as Link, and I don't really know why they decided to just let you change everything about him. I think that probably maybe threw off a bunch of Legend of Zelda people, especially seeing that this is a very canon and very widely regarded game in the Legend of Zelda universe.
Girahim's a pretty neat villain, and his encounters are always pretty enjoyable, since he's the main character that puts your sword skills to the test. But then we come to the best character in the entire game. I'm talking about Groose.
And then you got Groose, one of my favorite characters ever. Groose is hilarious. He's like the bully kind of character who also has a crush on Zelda, but, you know, Zelda doesn't really care about him.
Boy, this guy's got a redemption arc, he's got the Jimmy Neutron hair, he's got it all.
And Zelda gives some attitude to him, sticks up for Link. There's a lot of cute, fun moments that come in the beginning of the game before anything crazy happens.
In the other Legend of Zelda games, you know, they'd let you choose your own name, even though the character is technically just called Link. But, you know, in this iteration of the series, they just decided to kind of like go ham and let you be whatever you wanted. Like, you could have been, I don't know, like a lady. You could have been a lizard.
Skyward Sword is the first Zelda game that actually attempts to do stuff with the timeline. Shortly before the release, Nintendo released an official timeline and was like, this is the first one, okay?
This game is the first game in the timeline that apparently exists. It's the first one, so...
I never really encountered the Master Sword, but
I don't think there's a Master Sword even in it. My memory is a little hazy. I don't think there's a Master Sword.
Like, this is obviously the origin of the Master Sword, and it's kind of neat that Fi lives in the Master Sword and sort of has a presence in every Zelda game that includes it.
Wow.
It's just the courageous hero has to stop evil demon and rescue the girl. But this one there's a surface level too.
So let's stop ignoring the giant teethy boy in the room. This game hasn't really aged well in people's favor. Sure, it got a 10 from IGN, but IGN also gave Super Lucky's Tale a 5, so what the hell do they know?
When it came out, I feel like a lot of people were saying it was good too. It was like, I was seeing 10 out of 10s. You know, the typical big Zelda game comes out and everyone just gives it a 10 out of 10 because it's Zelda. That kind of thing.
in fact, if anything, I know this game got very good reviews. So I think maybe this is just a way to market to people who are not necessarily familiar with or new to the Legend of Zelda universe, because you could literally play this game out of the context of any of the other games and you should be fine, which is standard of most Legend of Zelda games as it is anywho. So that's good that they did that.
But it was only a couple of years later when I heard that everybody hated it. Like, it's the worst Zelda, don't even play it.
And if I'm being honest, yeah, it's probably one of the weaker 3D Zelda titles. But that still makes it better than all this other
Hold up, dude. What? I don't understand. Well, okay, I guess I understand.
I just really enjoy loving, the different games of the Zelda series. Not trilogy, there are a ton of them. I might just be thinking about the Triforce. But whatever,
Zelda is such a great series. Like, every game is not every game's a masterpiece, but most of them are. And I think this one is too, honestly.
I think one of the major gripes people have with this game is the repetition of the fights.
We got villains. Well, every Zelda game has some kind of villain. Sometimes it's just a mysterious demon at the end of the road, and sometimes it's a character. And we get Girahim in this one.
You fight Girahim like 3 times throughout the game. This isn't too much of a problem because these fights are fun, and they always added new mechanics to them that made them more interesting.
You'll throw his sword at him and he'll just take it and go like, no, bleh, and he'll do some kind of weird magic.
However, the same can't be said about the Imprisoned.
There's also the Imprisoned, which, yeah, the Imprisoned fights weren't that great, I'll admit that.
This guy is not only f***ing stupid design, he's also a very annoying boss that wasn't fun to fight once, let alone 3 different times.
So you're usually not prepared for it. Like, you're just flying around and all of a sudden somebody's like, he's back. Link, he's back. You gotta do it. You gotta come back, dude. You gotta stop him again. And you're like, oh God, not again. And you go in there and he's racing down to the magic thing at the center that will awaken him, and you gotta stop him. So it's fun in that sense where you gotta like, oh God, running down the mountain. Here he is again. How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? And you slice him up. You slice his toes. It's really weird. You gotta slice his toes to feed him.
First, he's just waddling up the hills and he's got these giant toes. Then he's got big goofy arms. And then he can fly now.
He can fly now? He can fly now.
I don't really have that much of a kinship for the people who tried to cut my head off. So, I made Link go with the other guy. I think he called himself a Stormcloak or something. Stormcloak? I don't really remember those guys in the lore of Legend of Zelda anywhere, maybe? Maybe they're like the fish people.
Fi? Fum, I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's Fi, I think.
She didn't annoy me as much as she annoyed other people, and I kind of actually liked how robotic she was in nature. But she ain't no Midna.
She's annoying. She's annoying as hell. She's kind of an interesting character. She's your helper in this game. She's your Navi. She's your Impa. Or not Impa. What's her name? Midna? Yeah.
Skyward Sword has a decent variety of dungeons. However, it feels a little limited because there are only 3 main areas in the game.
You go back to the same like 3 places over and over. Yeah, you do. I get it, but
Which, it's understandable. I don't blame them, honestly. They did a really good job with making the world feel more or less alive. You can only do so much, though, of course, which is, I guess, it starts to... The game starts to show cracks in its facade near the end.
You sort of revisit the same fire, forest, and desert environment a few times, and thematically, the dungeons in these areas don't change much upon subsequent visits.
I don't really see this as a valid complaint. One of the times you go back to the grass area, it's entirely underwater. And that is awesome, because you go into this new world, it's flooded, and you're like, what happened here? And you start swimming around, and you're like, this is the level I played through, except I'm swimming in it? We're swimming now? And the dungeons, oh, dude. The dungeons and the bosses in this game are probably the best. I know that's a bold statement, but in terms of Zelda, they really change up the pace.
I think for most people, the coolest mechanic that stands out are the time stones in the desert area. The way they introduce you to these time shifting stones is very intuitive, and you start off by working with multiple time shift stones, and by the end, you're working with a singular stone that affects the whole dungeon. And it's pretty damn cool.
There's that desert that's an ancient, wiped out civilization, but you have the gem that, like a time traveling gem that has an area of effect around you, so that everywhere around beyond the area is like sand and nothingness, but since you have the time stone that goes in the past, it's like grassy and full of life in the tiny area that you have the gem. And you have to solve puzzles with that mechanic, and it's such a cool mechanic.
The land of Hyrule is humongous, and I'm just so blown away, honestly, by the amount of choice and the amount of stuff that is jam-packed into this world, especially when you start up like a new game, right? So that's it's just tremendous how big it is.
Skyward Sword also has the honor of having the literal only good water dungeon in any Zelda game in the form of the Ancient Cistern.
A temple, like an ancient temple, you go in and you steal some kind of treasure, and then all the bokoblins around you start waking up and become zombies, and you're like, whoa, zombies? We're doing zombies in Zelda? This is weird. And then, I mean, not re-deads. I mean real zombies, like they're brainless versions of the old enemies you've been fighting. And you gotta run out of there as fast as you can. You see a glimmer of light in the ceiling and there's a rope coming down, and you gotta climb the rope, and you're like, oh god, oh. And then you look down and you see tons, like a mountain of zombies slowly climbing up, trying to get you through the rope, and you're like, I didn't know they could climb ropes! Ah! You gotta get out of there. You keep climbing and climbing and climbing to get away from the zombies. Like, no other Zelda game has some kind of weird moment like that, and there's so many of them.
It looks cool, it's got some cool mechanics, and you get to fight Galactos.
And you know what makes the bosses so unique? Is because of the motion control gameplay.
The gameplay is really fun, but it really kind of breaks from what your standard Legend of Zelda stuff is. So normally, Legend of Zelda is third person, it's overhead overview. Usually get to see Link in all of his action. I know the recent one allowed you to get different kinds of weapons, so this is probably more following along the lines of that, which I think is really fun, honestly.
The enemy design encouraged thinking about how to use them in a way so it'd be incredibly difficult to just wing it.
You got the motion controls. Every enemy has you gotta hit this one horizontally, you gotta hit it vertically. It doesn't change it up that much, but it changes it up enough to where you actually gotta think about what you do when you fight.
Although I will admit, it's kind of awkward when an enemy holds up their weapons in a specific pattern that leaves them vulnerable to attack.
Let's see you get past this. Oh!
You have this 6, 7, or 8 directional motion you can do with your sword, and it's cool because you have to think about what you're gonna do.
Oh, I almost forgot to talk about the flying. It kind of sucks.
Everything's already said and done. Now you gotta kill Girahim and Demise. You gotta do it. So you go back to the spiraling mountain place, and Girahim's at the center doing some kind of dance or whatever, and
and he has to go to like the top of this really big mountain, speak with like Zelda. She's also a dragon in this one. I don't really know why they did that, and she also sounds like a man. So I guess Zelda's a he in this particular iteration of the universe. Regardless, you have to then like look at the Triforce piece, which has been translated into a scroll. And then you have to like gain the power of the Triforce, I think, by yelling.
So you fight Girahim one last time, and he becomes super dark, and he doesn't even use swords anymore. Then he becomes a sword, like he's just an evil version of Fi.
And then you ascend to the clouds of darkness with lightning, and you gotta fight Demise head on. He's this big ass dude with flames in his head, a giant sword, and he and you are gonna fight.
And then Demise shows up and uses him as a sword, and you're like, oh, it's an evil master sword.
So he has to he tries to fight Ganondorf, but it doesn't work because he can only really like, you know, he can shout him out of the sky, but you know, he can hit him as much as he wants, but he's Ganondorf's immortal in the real world, so Link has to go to the death dimension and defeat him.
But you fight Demise in this sort of reflective pool, and you're like, wait a minute, I've seen this before. This is all so familiar.
And this is the first of many fights between these two people. By fate, will always be attacking each other. It's just really cool. A lot of it is cool as hell.
Legend of Zelda universe just opens up tremendously. I just think it's very, very good.
It's like, yeah, I'll come back, and I'll never die, and your descendants will be cursed to fight evil forever, and yeah. What do you know how it goes? And it's like an endless cycle of good versus evil. You know, I kind of like that.
3
out of 3
Triforces
battery
out of
bars.
3
One out of 10.
Triforces.
Because Fee told me I should get new batteries.